There are three basic reasons. Number one, and it's mostly economic in impact, the oil price decline. Nigeria is a monoproduct economy to all intents and purposes. So we are largely dependent on oil to keep our economy going. The pandemic and the lockdowns that we're facing, we have had severe losses of productivity in the country, and that is further shrinking the economic space. So with all of these constricted revenues that we're getting in Nigeria, it's not only affecting the federal level of the country, it's affecting state and local government as well. Because in Nigeria, states, with the notable exception of Lagos, states actually get their revenues and they're dependent on federal transfers for their ability to keep things running. So the economic space which contains Nigeria's political elite, is really shrinking. And as it is shrinking, I expect that the elite competition for resources and competition to continue to be in control of Nigeria's resources, that it's going to get even more heightened. And because of the sense of urgency around COVID-19, for instance, people are wondering whether normal procurement rules should be applied and whether normal procurement rules could be applied and whether you could really keep things above board. But the amounts of money that are being spent are now incredible. We're having figures bandied around like $3.4 billion that Nigeria has borrowed from the IMF. We have Nigerian Central Bank bringing out 3.5 trillion nairas, and it's roughly about 500 naira to 1 British pound. So in any currency, these are large numbers and they're huge amounts. So there's a high risk that we will keep moving towards skipping the rules and becoming more autocratic over the allocation of Nigeria's scarce resources. Even before COVID-19 hit the shores of Nigeria, civic spaces were already beginning to get constricted, and it was in the name of national security concerns. There was the feeling that with social media, hostile powers could get their foot soldiers in with civil society in Nigeria, and they could control the narrative, and they could destabilize countries like Nigeria simply by putting out false information, fake news, and so on. So there was a move being made by the military and the establishment, especially politicians, to try to bring in new laws to manage or regulate civil society, the activities of civil society organizations, and also to regulate social media. They seem determined to get the individual Nigerian to be more accountable to the state, because they say they're acting in the interests of the state, and there are some people who could subvert the state, and therefore there was a need to curb the activities of civil society and social media. Meanwhile, pro-democracy activists and ordinary people in Nigeria have been screaming about the need to protect their civil liberties and protect free speech in the context where the accountability and establishment of government to the people is actually very weak. Because the process through which leaders emerge does not depend on the financial contributions of ordinary people, and some have argued that it actually doesn't depend on their votes either, but it's the finances and the will of political godfathers that determines who becomes a leader in Nigeria. Now, given that context, how much leverage does anybody have on rules-based economy or liberal democracy or the norms of keeping society open? So when leaders emerge, they do not feel they owe their accountability to citizens. So the form of democracy that Nigeria actually has and how rules are applied to the running of the economy and so on is constantly put to the test in Nigeria. And with the things I mentioned earlier, with the oil price crash, the dependency on oil as a monoproduct economy, and also the lockdowns from COVID-19 and so on, and the attendant damage to productivity of the country, is creating a need to look and join all the dots around it and not just look vaguely at liberal democracy, but look very carefully at why it matters to try to protect that. There is a challenge of unequal opportunity, and opportunity, therefore, in this constricted space now belongs more to the informal institutions of power, patronage, and privilege. The tighter things get in the economy, the more likely that the inequalities will become more pronounced and tensions will increase along the fissures in society, because there are many fissures in Nigerian society on the subject of age, gender, ethnicity, religion, and so on. And the easier it will be for those who are already in control to use that to keep the opportunities to those within their camp who belong to the right divides in society that they represent. So we're facing a danger and a dangerous time. The more constrained the economy becomes, because the inequalities in society will be used by the political leaders from across all divides to try to jockey for position in Nigeria, and creating therefore a level of instability on top of the difficulties that we're already facing. Nigeria's big men sitting atop vast pyramid-structured patronage networks based on regular cash and carry kickback relationships, such that every level of Nigerian government has its relevant big men and their supporters, a phenomenon that scholars call neo-patrimonialism. The growing distance between this political elite and the general public, however, has undermined accountability and left the elite free to play the ethnic card for selfish ends. End of quote. So the challenge of corruption is then that a further layer is added over the fissures in society by those wanting to remain in control of who gets what, to ensure their camp continues to have dominance over other camps. They don't see corruption necessarily as a moral question. They see corruption as a survival issue. For them, corruption is instrumental. It is that tool that you use to maintain your dominance over other camps. So the competition will then become even more intense if we introduce the challenge of corruption into it. Some stakeholders have to defend the norms. Yes, the question would also arise as to who should lead this defense. But the norm most under pressure in Nigeria right now is one of accountability of the leaders to the people in a democracy. And to defend this norm, we have to ensure that we keep a special eye on campaign financing and electoral systems and encourage the ordinary citizen to actually finance their preferred candidates. But with an impoverished polity, this is not likely to happen at all without economic empowerment across the board. So this empowerment also will not happen given the structure of Nigeria's economy. Now, 96% of the private sector in Nigeria is made up of micro, small, and medium enterprises, 96%. And a large chunk of agricultural lands and production and food production is actually in the hands of the smallholder producer. So actually, if you're looking at where the power ought to lie in a place like Nigeria, it is with the people. So what is lacking right now is organization and coordination to harness that potential power. This must be done between now and Nigeria's next elections in 2023. So who needs to provide this leadership? I would say enlightened politicians who are now losing out of the current situation given the shrinking of Nigeria's economy. Business people who spot a moment in time to deploy inclusive business models and can see their opportunity to grow their business, but in ways that are inclusive. Because it's only that mutual growth between them and the people at the bottom of the pyramid that can create a sustainable business model. So they need to come. Then also, I would say business membership organizations who have the opportunity to organize their members or the opportunity to convince the micro, small, and medium enterprises that this is the time to come together to harness their voices in advocacy. These are the groups, at least, that I see coming together with civil society actors to make this needed change happen. This is a lot of work, but where that spark of leadership will come from is what I'm not sure of at this moment. And who would be the catalyst that will bring the people together is also what I'm not sure of. But I'm sure that businesses, large businesses, business membership organizations, politicians who are losing out at the moment, even if they're unrepentant, we need to, because there is a convergence of interests with civil society to actually make this thing happen. I think that this is where we're going to see some possibility of movement happening to defend, especially the norm of accountability. Once you can restore accountability in our democratic setting, then a lot of the other norms can then be argued for. So for me, this is the core, this is the key.